welcome to Cosplay Stitch and Seam. I'm Pannon.
I'm Vfire.
And I'm David.
Nice.
Nice.
I feel like the and I'm David always sets the tone for the little banter.
I want to always incite a little bit of energy with the I'm David.
I love it.
Do you guys do this every now and again of if I ever get famous, this is one of the questions I want to be prepared for? And I think about this one a lot. What's the energy you bring in with the and I'm David? No, that's just me? Okay, cool. So I'm deleting that part of the podcast.
No, it's unique every time and they're fun. So I enjoy
it.
I'm always like, what's it going to be this time? Excellent.
Be all on your toes.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keeping our listeners on their toes as well. If our listeners ever want to go ahead and write into us at any time, tell us about their favorite and I'm David intro. You can do that a number of ways. The first is our email, which is cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com, or
you can go to our website at cosplaystitchandseam.com and fill out our contact form there, or
go join our Discord server. It's free. Did you know that? It's free. You can come join us. We have I know. It's a fantastic community of people who want to see what you're working on. And, hey, we've got a whole channel just for horror stories. We would love to hear them. We'd love to share them. With your consent, of course. We are constantly trying to make sure that we're doing better every single day. And one of the ways that we can do better is by broadening our audience. Share the podcast with a friend if you want to help us do that, or leave us a rating and review on your podcasting app of choice. That always helps us out. It really, really does. And of course, if you only have a few bucks burning a hole in your pocket, and you want to support us, we do have a Patreon. Quick side note, I wanted to address to our audience. If you had to bail from the Patreon, we totally understand. Your finances are very important. If you didn't feel like you were getting what you wanted out of it, that also makes sense to us. It's your money. Do with it that makes you happy. No pressure to us. It just helps us out.
We still love your faces.
Yeah, there's no shame in anybody dropping. If you drop, we see it. We understand. You do what you got to do to take care of yourself, and we recognize
you're not
that.
Buying our love, so.
Yeah, our love is conditional that you continue to download the show, though. So that's where it really is. So, but on our Patreon, patreon.com/cosplaystitch, for $3 a month, you get a shout out every single episode. And for $5 a month, you will be able to join our Cosplay Chronicles. It's D&D. It's us being silly and doing it live, so you can come and join us, have a good time. Maybe I'll even throw it to the chat every now and again of hey, what should this next thing be? Help me determine a name, or, I don't know, be immortalized like the Lazy Wheel, I think is the tavern that was created by our audience at one point in time. So come join us over there for that kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
nice.
All right, what are we talking about today, Pannon?
Oh, well, I feel like every cosplayer has run into this when they have gotten to a contest, especially if you're competing for the first time, and that is BuildBooks. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what BuildBooks are, Mercedes?
Yeah, so BuildBooks, you'll see in past episodes and whatnot, we usually refer to them as documentation. BuildBooks is such a better name. I've slowly been seeing this grow more and more, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's genius. No idea who's coined that term, but I love them. It's essentially, let's define what they're supposed to be. So what are they for? What's their purpose? And it's to show your process for creating this cosplay in summary. It's not a full tutorial or things like that, but it's in summary so that a group of judges, they've got 5 minutes with you in the judging room, and then maybe later on they pull out that documentation, they flip through it again to reference something. It's for the judges, and for you a little bit in a way too, to really, you're tooting your horn with it. You need to do that. And it's showing off your work. Again, in summary, you don't want to get too wordy or too, You're not handing them a novel. A lot of times contests always, again, check with the contest to see how many pages you're allowed to have. And you can go from there. But yeah, the basic thing is just showing your process. And yeah.
I mean, I feel like every few months there's a new cosplay drama out there, but a lot of times it's based on like so and so was found cheating at a convention or contest or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And BuildBooks are one of the ways that judges or cosplay staff are able to curtail that a bit. Having like a book that shows your body of work and how you got from point A to point B helps reduce the amount of people who are going to enter the contest with something they didn't make themselves.
Mm-hmm. So what do we put in the build books? Like what are important things?
So for me, I would say I put in the book what is essential. And that can be really hard when you have done a giant build, especially if you're like up in the masters category. So you've probably been spending the last 6 months or a very intense 2 weeks making this costume. So there's probably a lot of stuff to cover, and you want to make sure the judges know all of the work that you put in. But you also don't want to overwhelm them or have more in the book than you can reasonably talk about in the allotted time for judging.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the judges are going to try to follow along with your book as you go, or you can even use that as a reminder to like what you're going to talk about the costume, what order you want to talk about the pieces in, what you want to emphasize or highlight. I think planning your build book around like how you plan to talk is a really good idea because it makes it really easy to follow. And the less time you're flipping between pages for them to find the right spot, the more time you're going to have to talk about your work.
Yes. I also want to throw out there, like, build books, there really is no right or wrong way to create one, but there are definitely things that you want to make sure that you have in them, regardless of how you present it. And I really want to do a quick shout out to, I apologize if I pronounce this wrong. I've only seen your name on Discord, and I adore everything that you have put in this Discord channel. But it's Faelae, spelled Faeliae. So for anybody listening, please look this cosplayer up. They have amazing slides. This slideshow is over 80 pages.
Oh, goodness.
On BuildBooks. Yes. And there are so many different examples in there from lots of different cosplayers along with credits at the end. I love this. This is so cool. But yeah, I'm going to reference just one slide for right now, slide 3, where Faelae lists out what you need to put in the build book. So like the purpose is obviously documentation, proof of your work, and presentation of unseen details. General guidelines. We'll go over those more in a moment because it aligns a lot with what they have on here. I'm just gonna skip over to the big 4 blocks on here. Is the who, what, how, and why. Who's the character? Reference photos, guys. Have that page 1 if you can. And if you have a finished photo, that also works too. What did you do? What materials did you use? What techniques? How did you make it? Right? What techniques did you? What skills were learned and utilized? Photos of things that aren't visible in person. And why you made those choices. This kind of goes, back to our last episode where there's reasons why you chose to build a cosplay a certain way, and adding that in there adds weight to what techniques and things that you used. But yeah, so that's Faelae. Faeliae. And I would highly recommend reaching out to get the whole like 80 plus slides, because there's lots of really good examples in there. But yeah, I think that's a really good rundown of like your having the who are you cosplaying, have a reference image, the what materials and things did you use, how did you put it together, and why. Yeah. So how do you actually display that? How should we go about that, Pannon and David?
Oh boy.
David, because you've done some.
I've done two.
You've done two.
Yeah. For me, I usually try to keep it between 5 and 8 pages front and back. Just because I want to make sure the judges can fully look through it in the allotted time. I have seen people do, up to 30 some odd pages, 50 pages, etc. I think if you're doing more pages, you need to temper your expectation about what the judges are going to reasonably have time to look through. It's not going to be fair to other contestants if they're spending, 10 extra minutes to go through everything in your build book when they can only spend 2 to 5 on someone else's. So a lot of that is in to make it fair. Not to say that like you haven't done an insane amount of work on your costume, but we want to make sure that like the judges are giving a fair amount of attention to everyone. A lot of things that come to mind are like either things I have seen that have been absolutely wonderful or things that I would like advise against doing. I see a lot of people now that we're moving to more like online build books or like slideshows or image galleries and things like that. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make with the online image galleries is they don't edit. They just dump all the images that they took of their entire build and they put them all in a folder. And so they'll give the judges something like 150 images of like every single step of the process. And the judges are not going to have time to filter through all of that in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to know what to look at or what I'm looking at depending on like what kind of photo you've taken.
Yeah.
It might make sense to you at the time, but to me I'll be like, what is this?
Yeah.
It looks like your elbow. Why is your elbow in this shot? And then you're like, oh yeah, my elbow's in this shot because I'm trying to show that like, I was like measuring this thing to my elbow lengths or something. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just making up stuff. But
no,
yeah.
but that's a good point. I will say that like you shouldn't also feel like you can only put one image on each page. Like look at collages, look at scrapbooking samples where people will have 4 to 5 to 8 images on a page. Those images should be telling a story. Like make sure that like it's easy to follow. If someone was looking at this and didn't read through any of the like extra words you put on the page, would they be able to have a sense of what's going on? Like
and the story is how you built it.
Right.
I really like that story idea, and that's something that like in my guts storybook, that's exactly what I did, is like the story of here's the story of how I made the sword, here's the story of how I made the armor, here's the story of the wig, and here's the miscellaneous things, because I think I gave myself like an 8-page front and back limit.
Nice. Yeah, I think dividing it up by piece you've worked on is also really helpful, especially if you're someone like me who tends to jump around when they're making a project. So I'll put like an hour or 2 on the dress, and then I'll put like 3 hours on the prop, and then I'll put like an hour on the wig because I can only focus for so long on one thing. So a lot of times my images, when they're in timeline order, don't make a lot of sense. So when I'm sorting them out for a build book, I'll try to put those in the order of like creation per item so that they're easy to follow, like David was saying. That's super helpful. Or again, putting together like collages. Think of it like a comic going from one thing to another. Has been really helpful. Also, if you want to go above and beyond, making your build book memorable is always a good idea. So what do I mean by that?
You can theme them. So like when we did the Hades group with X Angel and Strawberry Milk cosplay, our documentation for that was all themed off of the video game Hades. We had character profiles, and each character profile had like a little brief summary of who the character was and pictures of pieces that were finished on that same page. And then you flipped it over and it was like the item lists kind of thing in the game, and it was like all of our different items that we created with brief summaries of like what materials and techniques were used on each of them and how they were built. It was very cool. Shout out to X Angel's husband CJ for arranging that for us. That was super, super awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, so, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. If you're like, oh man, I don't arrange things really well, I recommend checking out Canva. I love Canva. My students are like, why do you love it so much? And I'm like, it's freaking awesome, okay? It's free. There are paid, things in it, but, we're all creative types. You're fine using what you can find for free on there to use, and you can build everything in there. On that note with digital things, also check with the contest if you need to have a physical one, and if there's an option to have a physical document, always have a physical one. Digital ones get forgotten very easily, especially if you're just showing them on your phone. The judges no longer have access to that, where if you leave a physical one with the judges, they can then pull that out later to look at it. And most contests will make sure that you can get those back at the end too. And the reason I bring up getting them back at the end is that sometimes we see really cool documentation that's done like a scrapbook. You open it up, it's like full scrapbook. Oh, there's one that had perfume in it. It was very, very calming to look through. It was definitely something that was like near and dear to this cosplayer's heart, and I wanted to make sure they got it back at the end. And it stood out. I remember it even now. And having, something that's printed nicely, even if it's just paper, and you've stapled the side, that's great. You don't have to go super all out, but it also depends on your preferences. Going through Fele's slides here, like I just pick a random one and someone's got like an actual printed book. For me personally, that seems a little expensive for a small document that you're giving the judges. But I do love that idea of like, oh man, maybe I should do like a full build book later and print it, of my cosplays.
Yeah.
But it stands out, and it's a really nice way of presenting your work. You get to choose how to do that.
Nice. I do like the idea too of like catering it to the character or group that you're cosplaying. Like I remember when I was doing portfolios for like World Cosplay Summit, I did them as if they were like a Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts menu. So like all of the like character information was set up like a in-game menu, like you were saying with your Hades one. I saw in a contest, let's see, we had a character who was from like ancient Japan, and they had done their progress book on a cloth scroll. So they rolled it out across like 2 tables, and you could see all the photos and progress were like printed onto fabric.
What? Beautiful.
And it was such a fun idea. It was very unique and like stood out because it was different. But like thinking of what would be interesting and exciting about the world that you're cosplaying from, I think is what really gives you a step up in making your book stand out. You almost want to like think of it as an extra prop to make.
Yeah.
For my Hollow Knight one, I used, because it's a 2D game, I used all the backgrounds for different pages.
Cute.
So that way I had like, this is just the element, this is the world, this is like, so you get to have a chance to feel like, oh, this is the green path, this is just really, really peaceful, and oh, this one looks a little scary because it's, so like I worry that I added up too much there, because I definitely know that I wrote out, I personally try not to include too much text besides like very clarifying things for mine. Because again, like you said, like they have 5 minutes and I want it to be memorable. So I try to include like the relevant photos of, this is what I'm trying to make. These are the steps that I took to make it for each of that portion of the story.
Yeah. And if you're more comfortable doing writing, have somebody review it and see. So like I recently working on just my application for Level Up Expo. And I've got, a picture and then a description next to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this too wordy? And so I sent it to a friend to look at, and it was Ex Angel, and she replied with, it is a little wordy, but your voice comes through in the writing, and I can see you're very passionate about this. And I was like, oh, good. Okay. So now I'm like, maybe I will shorten it a little bit and add another image, but I know what I have written does work. So have a friend look at it and give you feedback on if they understand what's going on. And, if your writing feels boring, maybe more pictures are better for that. And summaries are great. Like I used to summarize everything with bullet points. I've learned to kind of balance it out over time, but it's just really up to you on like how you want to display that. But short and sweet is very good, because again, the judges don't have a ton of time.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Nice.
And on the note of like theming it too, if a judge like comes in and they don't know what Hollow Knight is, right? David has now introduced them to that world through the document, and now they can be like, oh, I see where all this is coming from, more than just having the character reference. They're seeing that world come through the pages as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Is that any final things before we move on?
There's one that I like to do, which is on a page, if I'm showing off, like, let's say my boots for the drifter, I'll have a reference of the boots in game, and then like, because I'm doing more of a custom design, my drawing next to that, and then my process for creating it. So that way they don't have to keep flipping back to the main reference. They can have it there on that page, and they're not having to flip pages back and forth. That one I have found to be very useful, and it's very helpful. Like as a judge seeing that, that helps me too. So.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's about it. Have fun. Be creative. Don't be afraid of a build book. They're cute. They're fun. Yeah.
We've talked about some awesome ideas for build books, but do we have any
horror stories? Spooky.
We sure do. From our Discord server, we've got one from Olive. They write, a couple years ago, I was making my cosplay of Nia from Gurren Lagann. It was the first time I had ever put work into tailoring, and I ended up creating a pattern based on a commercial one that was fitted carefully to my measurements. I had it drawn onto brown craft paper so that so it would last and I could use it for future projects, and I was really proud of it. A little while later, I came home and my husband had cleaned up my craft room a bit. I was grateful, but when I went looking for it, that carefully tailored pattern, later on, it was nowhere to be found. After some investigation, we realized that he had thrown the whole thing away, thinking it was just scraps of paper on the ground. In his defense, I'm pretty messy and prone to leaving things like this on the floor.
No.
Thankfully, I had already made Nia's dress by the time that had happened, but I had hoped to have it as sort of a block pattern for the future. He felt incredibly guilty and has made a point to never try to clean my crafting space again.
It was based in a good thought. It was,
definitely.
That's so sad. Shout out for making your own like sloper patterns though for your own measurements. Those are so helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, bummer though. Well, yeah, if you guys want to send us, like, honestly, send us your build books. I want to see all these fun, unique builds y'all have done.
Oh my gosh, and definitely check out Fele's slides. Like, ask her about them. They're great. There's so many examples in there. I was like, oh, I want to try this.
Yes. But you can send those to us at our email, which is cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com, or
you can go to our website, cosplaystitchandseam.com, and send us fill out the contact form on there. Again, I'd love to see your build books as well. They're just fun.
Definitely. And don't forget to go to our Discord server where you could even share your link to a Google slide or a Google Doc. We would love to see it. And if you want feedback, you can always ask for that as well. And we will happily provide you constructive and only positive feedback where things can be changed and not, oh, this is bad. We want to support you and see you grow as well. And if you're on the internet and you're wanting to hang out with us, don't forget to support the show. There are many different ways so you could do that. Share the podcast with a friend, leave a review where your podcasting app lets you. And of course, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/cosplaystitch. Some of the amazing people that we need to thank are Cloven Creature, Rain Mice, Jack S, Cynthia Eve, Star Fetcher, Yggdrasil, Dr. Steggy, Cynics, Jazzy Kofed, Gloria Shu, and Silver Deeds.
Yes. Thanks as always to Macy Roberts for the use of her music as our theme song, and to David Jeffress for Faye's amazing editing. How are your podcasts going, David?
They're going so stinking great. Comic Trades Monthly, where we hang out and we talk about our favorite comic book in a book club format. Every month we do this, so if you want to come hang out with us, that's definitely always an option. And of course, The Last Voice, an audio drama about surviving the end of the world with, I think at this point I can talk about it a little bit, it's Arthurian. It's got some Arthurian vibes in there. So if you enjoy that, I would highly recommend that.
Excellent. So today's joke is for the Lord of the Rings fans out there who hopefully won't kill me for this joke. What do the Uruk-hai put in their cars?
What did they put in their cars?
Mordor oil.
Fun fact, Viggo Mortensen actually broke his toe when he was writing that joke.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Okay,
Hi guys.
Side note.
What?
My sister-in-law got to actually tell that story legitimately.
Oh my gosh. Bye.
Bye.